how do you approach a lake when it's that brutal? I mean, obviously this could be a very tough event.
No doubt. So the water temperature almost never gets below 50 degrees in that region of the country. And I will guarantee you right now it's in the 30s. So it's never been seen before. They broke records from the 1800s all over the South. And as good as a cold water angler as I am, I mean, you grew up, doing the same thing. You live in Minnesota. Yeah. You know what fishing in right after ice out's like and things like that, or late in the fall. But this is just, untapped territory. I'm not 1,000% sure myself. It's a fairly shallow lake. I don't know how it'll affect them, but I know the fish will bounce back quick. So, and again, the forecast is a lot better. It's not great, but it's in the 50s and 60s next week. So it's going to be interesting. It'll be one to definitely watch. You can watch every day the live stream on the MLF Now, and so you can watch it and see how it unfolds. So it's full field the first 2 days of the top 40 guys, and then it cuts down to 2 groups of 20, and then the final day it's just the top 10. So we're gonna hopefully I can be there. It's one of those deals. I like tough events, but I sure don't want it this tough. I mean, that's not anything anybody's looking forward to.
Well, next week you'll be at Red Crest. It'll be really interesting to catch up at that time. And the cool thing is too, we've got Jordan Lee coming on as well, and he'll be competing. So it'd be fun to kind of compare notes between the two of you guys as we go forward.
Yeah, that's right midweek too. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. Hey, we got a great guest on tonight, Gene Jensen. He's known really well for his YouTube channel as the Flukemaster. And here's a guy that spends a lot of time on the road. He does a lot of kayak fishing, but he also is a very avid educator in bass fishing. So we're going to get deep into tackle storage and tackle prep and stuff like that when he comes on. So that's going to be a ton of fun. And it's an important topic. I know it's a big deal for you as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I've watched a lot of Gene's videos, and he fits perfectly with us because this is College of Bass. We're all about teaching. We're all about, giving our experiences. And, I've been fishing professionally for 30 years and I've learned a lot of things and I've made a lot of mistakes. And Gene's the same way. He's kind of a no nonsense guy, tells it the way that it is, has his opinions about it, and he fishes all over. So, and he's, again, not just a kayak angler, but he's a bass boat angler. He fishes tournaments. He's well-versed and he travels, to different regions. I actually talked to him this afternoon. He was going out to shoot a bladed jig video. So, he's definitely into it and trying to provide the latest in content.
Yeah. By the way, if you need an auger next week, I can ship one down for you.
Yeah. I'm bringing my ice helix along too.
Hey, there was a photo that you shared the other day of all the edge boxes on your shop. Actually, it's right here. I got to ask you, what % of the tackle boxes that you actually bring to an event is represented up on that shelf right now?
Well, I end up with more than that in my Z21, and I have probably 3 times that many. And to me, being organized is absolutely critical, both at home and on the road as well. And I've got my system. I'm very anxious to see, how Gene does it, because he's traveling a lot too. And especially if you're fishing in a kayak, you're really limited to what you can carry. So you got to be very, very efficient in that situation. But, I just basically, just like most people, I use a lot of speed bags and I use a lot of Plano edge boxes, and I just swap out the ones that fit for that type of fishing. I've got some that are geared for smallmouth or big swim baits or whatever it is. And I know that certain things are going to be in play and other times they're going to be totally out. So, you can always keep them in the truck, but in the boat, I try to have the things in my front boxes that I'm going to be using the most.
Yeah. Hey, we've got a ton of people commenting. Thank you for joining us. If you've got questions for Kevin, we're going to be taking viewer questions throughout the night. So if you have a question or two, send them through to us. And if we don't get to the questions tonight, stick with us next week, because what we'll do is we'll sift through the questions. We'll pull some of the key ones and run them next week. And we do want to answer them. And let's take advantage of having Kevin available for this. So tune in next week on that. Hey, the other thing I want to mention, Kevin, we had a big winner last week in the Plano Prize Pack. And it was pretty cool to find out. His name was Brock Watkins of Ottawa, and cool story with Brock, huh?
Yeah, I mean, Brock's a young angler, and we're seeing such a resurgence right now in youth fishing. A lot of high school programs, collegiate fishing has grown. I mean, Jordan Lee was one of the first anglers to come through the college ranks, and look at him now. So Brock's he's a young aspiring pro. He's starting the high school career now, so he's definitely going to get a little leg up with some of the stuff that we got him in that prize package. So hopefully he has a great season this year, and we'll see him on tour one of these days.
And he was active last week. That's why he won the Plano prize pack with $275.
Yep.
And we're going to give another one away tonight. So everybody that's watching tonight, you're eligible to win this prize pack. A lot of edge boxes, some Strike King lures, and the College of Bass Yeti tumbler. So it's pretty cool. So to win, just get involved, ask this question, share and like the program, make some comments, and that's pretty cool. Hey, there's something special about this Yeti mug as well.
Yep. So this Yeti Rambler that we have, it's the College of Bass one from Plano. So they're available for sale on the Plano site. This limited edition version that we have right here, they're $29.95, and all the proceeds are going to the Professional Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, which is, it's a nonprofit organization. If you haven't seen the Professional Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, it's housed in the Wonders of Wildlife Museum there in Springfield, Missouri, right next to the Bass Pro. It's an awesome display, and all this material and old baits and memorabilia and things like that. It's definitely worth it. I've been a big supporter of the Professional Bass Fishing Hall of Fame for a lot of years, been to a lot of the banquets, and to see the hall in person is really special. So hats off to Plano and Yeti for getting this together. And again, to put all the proceeds from these to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, it's a big deal. So, I mean, that's the exact same price that a Yeti Rambler goes for, and they're putting all the money, and it's customized special for this. So I think you'll like it. You can go to the website right there in the bottom of the screen and check it out and get yours yourself.
Hey, what's cool, Kevin, is this year Ron Linder, who passed away just a few months back, was inducted, and it was very exciting for me to see him. I'm a big fan of Ron and a good friend, and I want to congratulate you as well. Your induction in 2018. So congratulations on that. Hey, we had one other order of business before we get too much into things. If you are interested in buying a Plano Edge box, and you'll hear tonight how good they are. There's a phenomenal product. Plano is actually offering free shipping on all boxes ordered directly from Plano this week. So just go to plano.com. This is valid through, I believe, Friday. So check it out and go online. Hey, Kevin, last week we went deep into some finesse techniques, shaky heads, especially a little bit on Ned rigs, and it generated literally several hundred questions, including one that came up from Lee Kimball, who had a question I thought was really good. He asked, how do you know when you try more of a reaction-based presentation versus slower, more realistic ones, jerk baits versus plastics? And I've been looking forward to getting your answer on this.
Well, that's a good question, in that you never know exactly, but I pretty much always try to start with a power reactionary type presentation to try to cover water and find where the fish are at. If you know an area that's holding fish, that's when you pick up your finesse. After you've caught one or two, maybe you had one follow a jerk bait in and he didn't bite. That's when you can throw a Nico rig or a Ned rig, or, you get a couple of bites off a spot or out of an area. That's when you want to, do your finesse. To me, is more of a cleanup type program. Unless you just got brutal conditions, like we got coming at Red Crest, I'm probably going to start out with a much slower presentation than normal when you see water temperatures down in the 30s like that. So obviously the conditions play a part of it, but a lot of it more is I'm trying to locate them first before I really try to pick an area apart.
So what is a reaction strike? I mean, if someone really didn't understand it, how does that differ from, say, a bass feeding versus, say, it reacting to a bait?
Okay, so in general, on most days, and this is even during the summer months when the water's warm, the bass or a bass will probably spend no more than 10% of its time in a day in a 24-hour period actively feeding, actively hunting, chasing prey. The rest of the time, they're just kind of hanging out. They're waiting for an opportunity, or they're just resting. And you can catch them in a lot of those situations by preying on the instincts that they have as a predator, by either shocking one into biting, with a fast moving presentation, just like if I throw a ball at your face, you're probably going to reach up and grab it, or knock it out of the way with your hands just to stop it from hitting you. And that's the same way with a bass. So, when it's a tough bite, a lot of times using a bait with a really fast fall will trigger that reaction, or a quick movement, an erratic presentation, a jerk bait darting to the side. All of a sudden it's unnatural and they don't even think, they just react to it. And a bass doesn't have hands, they use their mouth. So, those are the things that you can do. The other way is just that real antagonizing, slow presentation. And you better know where one's at to be able to do that. So fast presentations, erratic movements out of your bait, bumping your bait into cover, bumping it off the bottom. Those are things that trigger bass's instincts as a predator, just like you watch on National Geographic when, those lions are hunting a herd of wildebeest. They're looking for the one that's looking different. That's going to be an easy meal. That's not moving as aggressively as the rest, that looks different. So that's what you want to try to do, is make your lures look different than the natural forage.
Yeah. Hey, our guest is going to be in about 5 minutes, but I wanted to get going into spinnerbaits because there's so much to cover here. And I really wanted to start the conversation, and then we'll get into it a little bit. We'll probably then break the Gene and go into tackle storage, and then we're going to get deep back into spinnerbait. So are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love a spinnerbait. So this is one I've been waiting for.
So you've won a lot of money on spinnerbaits. You've won a lot of tournaments on them. They're not getting a lot of love in the press right now, but you're a big fan of spinnerbaits. What do you like about these baits, and what do they do better than other baits that are really out there right now?
Yeah. For a horizontal presentated lure, a spinnerbait is just so efficient in so many situations. The one thing that I like the most about it is that it's very weedless, so I can fish it through a lot of different types of cover, whether it's wood, grass, or rocks, anything like that. And then I can control the depth. By choosing the right weight and blade combination, I can keep it at whatever depth and at speed that I need to for that time of the year, for the conditions, the cover type. And it's all about efficiency. If you can keep a lure that has a lot of triggering qualities that a spinnerbait does, it's got a lot of flash, a lot of movement, vibration, it's the skirt, the head, the blades, it all looks good. It really imitates a bait fish very, very well. And, based on the conditions and the water clarity is how you choose spinnerbaits, but they just have unbelievable triggering qualities, and they're just, again, so efficient. You can't fish a bladed jig, for instance, through all thick, gnarly brush and flooded cover like you can a spinnerbait. It's four-wheel drive. It just goes anywhere, and it does it well in open water, clear water, dirty water, muddy water, cold water, warm water. You've run and moving water. A spinnerbait's a great choice. It's just, we have so many other tools in our tackle box now that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about it.
How many spinnerbaits do you typically carry for every event?
In my boat at any given time, I probably have 300, 400, but I probably have several thousand or the components to put together even that many in my truck too. So I have them by size, blade combination. When I say size, by weight and blade combination, I've got some compact models for clear water for high-speed presentations. I've got ledge, bottom dwellers for deep ledge fishing. And then I've got, shallow water spinnerbaits. I've got them for dirty water. I've got them for clear water. And that's really what we're going to get into when we dive deep, is the blades and how they displace water and how you pick a spinnerbait or how I pick a spinnerbait for certain conditions. And that's the magic to it, really. And that's where, guys that are really good at one technique, that's where they shine, is they just know the ins and outs of it. Just like Tommy Biffle's known as one of the best flippers, or Denny Brower's one of the best jig fishermen there is. I've done that same kind of homework with a spinnerbait, and I can make it work in a lot of situations.
So the smallest, what are the ones, the smallest ones you do carry? What are the heaviest ones you carry?
For the most part, my small finesse spinnerbaits are, 3/16 of an ounce. And, I throw a lot of them up to an ounce and 3/8. The Strike King bottom dweller and an ounce and 3/8 is great deep water spinnerbait. But the most common sizes for sure are, your quarter, 3/8, half, 3/4. I throw a lot of 3/4 still. And It just depends on if you're fishing the bank or what you're doing. You got to use the right tool for the right situation. And the spinnerbait is no different.
Sounds like somebody disagrees with you in the background.
Yeah, my son just got home from work and the dog went ballistic. So.
Hey, we want to bring our first guest in tonight, Gene Jensen, also known as the Flukemaster. He's got a very popular YouTube channel with nearly 400,000 subscribers, which is very impressive. So we want to welcome Gene to the College of Bass. Gene, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
How you doing, man?
Hey, Gene, how's it going, man?
Good, Kevin. How are you?
Good. How did that the bladed jig video go today? Did you catch them?
No, I didn't catch any, but I filmed the stuff I needed to. Now it's just a matter of finding the fish to catch and remembering what clothes I wore today.
Yeah. So. I know that the temperatures are pretty cold across the country and stuff like that. So it's challenging. We talked for a while today, but one thing that I think is a perfect fit. We're so glad to have you on the show tonight. You're a no nonsense guy. Your whole program is designed to teach people how to be more efficient, how to be better bass anglers, to learn, like I say, to learn from our mistakes and learn from our experiences. And, I've watched a lot of your videos and it's intriguing to me because, I'm a competitive bass angler and I pretty much almost always I'm competing out of my Z21, same boat. You fish a lot of bass tournaments out of a bass boat, but you spend a lot of time in a kayak too. And obviously when you're doing that, you're really limited on the space and the equipment that you can bring. So you've got to be really efficient. I'm sure you carry a lot with you. So tackle organization and having a sponsor like Plano is got to be a real advantage. And it's something you got to spend a lot of time on.
It's huge. When I first signed with Plano, I went on their website and I was amazed at how much of their stuff that I already had, the big totes, the plastic shelving in my barn, just tons of stuff that Plano makes that I already was using and had no clue that they made it and sold it. But those green and black totes that I carry, are big for me. I have a heavy duty shelf in my barn that's stacked with them. Each of them are labeled. Each of them have a specific, tackle 1, tackle 2, soft plastics box, camping box. Cause I do a lot of off the grid camping when I'm out traveling, and I can just pick them up, throw them in the back of the truck. They stack well, they don't slide around, and I just go. And it's just, and it's got all my stuff that I need. Yeah, there's the picture of them right there. And they're all labeled. And labeling is probably the most important thing you can do if you want to stay organized.
Yeah, it's funny. Those are Plano Sportsman's trunks, and I use the exact same thing. So I've got my shop. I've got a whole bunch of them there. I keep a lot of my extra plastics and things in them like that. And like you say, you got to label them because once you start getting a bunch of them, you'll have them. But I do the same thing on the road. A lot of guys have these organization systems or pull-out drawers and stuff. I don't think there's any more efficient way to use space than those Sportsman's trunks. They make them in multiple sizes. Like you say, they stack good. And that's what I do is when I get home from a tournament, I'll go through and, take the stuff out from there. If I'm going to Okeechobee, I know I need a bunch of June bug plastics and things. I pack it specifically for the tournament and then take it back and put it back where it's supposed to go. And that's something that my wife has taught me to be organized at home. And it's funny that you use the same system as I do.
It just makes things very, very easy. I mean, and you said it there. The big thing is when you get finished, you unload it and put everything away where it goes. Everything's got a place in my barn where it goes, and it doesn't stay in those boxes. The box gets packed for the next trip. I'm heading to Lake Murray next weekend. I've already got the soft plastics and all the stuff packed in those boxes, ready to hit the door. And it's just, you've got to do it. Especially for me, bouncing from kayak to boat is even more challenging because my kayak, I use 3,600 boxes, and the boat I use 3,700s, and it just gets to be confusing if you don't label and organize.
So Gene, how many miles a year do you put on?
My truck prior to COVID, 65,000 miles a year.
Kevin, how many for you? You got to be about the same, aren't you?
I'm not that much. I'm close to 50 or a little around that. So, yeah, I'm not.
I have to drive to Minnesota 3 times a year. It just, when it gets hot down here in the South, it's load the boat up and go to Minnesota.
But the reason I bring it up is, I mean, the efficiency in the boat actually starts in the truck itself. So it's interesting. What are you guys using for your soft plastics?
I use a lot of speed bags. Yeah. How about that, huh? So, and notice he's got his labeled with tape. So we have talked about a unique or adding a labeling system to those tags for them. So that's what I've done is I've just actually put tags on the end of those loops. And so I know what plastics are in each one, but that's how I keep them in my boat too. I keep them in those speed bags, and, you can have your drop shot baits or your creature baits or whatever like that. And then I have a lot of bulk plastics in those sportsman's trunks as well, too. So, but it's just so much easier to have them and know exactly what you got and be able to move from one lake to the next and have the right baits.
Yeah. Yep. I love the fact you can stack them in the boat very easily and back in the cubby, and it keeps everything under control on that. So that's pretty awesome. Hey, Gene, I know you do something a little different with your line storage, again, as a kayak fisherman. So can you take us through that, what you do there?
Yeah, and it started as a boat fisherman. I usually only carry, now Kevin's probably going to bust my tail for this one, but I usually only carry 2 or 3, maybe 4 cranking rods in my boat. And so I would get to the point where I'd want to change line out. And I didn't want to rip the good fluorocarbon off the reel, so I came up with an idea that in the beginning it's a huge investment, and you can see it right there on there. I take and I buy extra spools from 13 Fishing, and I'm sure other companies have extra spools, and I store them labeled with line on them, already on them. And I've got it here. I want to show you guys. And this is huge, even when you're switching to mono. I've got mono here. I've got braid. I've got 20 pound, 12 pound, all the way down to 8 pound test. And when I want to change out line, I just cut my bait, reel one in, pop a spool out, pop a new one in, run it back through the guides, and I'm ready to go. And that way, even especially on a kayak, I don't have a lot of. I may have 2 cranking rods if it's a crankbait day. And that way I can change depths. It's just really efficient, takes less than 2 minutes, and I'm back to fishing, and I've changed my line out. So, and it was a pretty good investment to begin with, but it saved me so much money from ripping off perfectly good line and putting on something different.
Yeah, it's pretty ingenious. And like on a kayak, you definitely gotta manage your space. So
yeah.
How much tackle just in lures do you carry on your kayak?
Actually, not that much. My system is kind of, I have the waterproof Plano boxes, ones that have the blue deal around them. I have a bunch of those that I've collected over the years, and they stay empty until I get to the lake. And that's when I pull out the sportsman's boxes, and that's when I pull out all my tackle. And I've looked at the water clarity and stuff like that, and it's helps me pick what lures I want. I already have an idea, flat side crankbaits and things like that, but I'll start pulling things out and organizing them in those boxes. And then I'm able to store more tackle or more variety of tackle that way, instead of just, a bunch of 3,700 boxes that may have just half the amount of variety.
Yeah. The new Edge boxes, there's a lot of great features to them. Obviously, a big one for me, because I use the waterproof stowaways almost exclusively before I switched to the Edge boxes, is the clear lid. Just being able to see exactly where everything's at and what color it is. I mean, they are crystal clear. But the other big thing that shocked me after fishing a year with them last year is, like, I've got a bladed jig box. The Edge jig box is absolutely amazing. It's the best way I've ever seen to store bladed jigs. But, when you put one back in there and it's still a little bit wet in a waterproof stowaway, I would end up with having a little bit of rust in my box after a year. Last year, I fished with that bladed jig box for the whole season. And I put 170 Thunder Crickets in that box, in that one box. So that's a big investment. And you know what? This is my terminal box. Look how much money I've got right there in that terminal box. But when you do that, yeah, exactly. it stores them so good, but I don't get any rust because it's got that restrictor molded into everything, the lid, and then it's got that little water wick. They are amazing boxes. Absolutely the finest tackle storage system ever made, and continually improving them. We keep getting new models and stuff. So
yeah, they just came out with the 3600s, and I'm gonna change all of the old waterproof ones to the new 3600 ones. So yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Well, I watched a video. It's one of your latest ones on your terminal box, and I think we got a picture of that. And you got a pretty good system for running your terminal as well. So I think Kai can pull that photo up here of, I'm sure,
of my terminal box. If not, I've got
that's Kevin's box.
Yeah, that's my terminal box.
Mine's got. There you go.
There you go.
So again, this specific picture, it was packed for Florida. And I've still got it packed that way. And I'm going to pull one of the one in the box in the upper left-hand corner is this one right here. And it's got all of the weighted swim bait hooks. See, I'm going to be throwing paddle tail swim baits down in Florida, and I've got those. But now I'm home. This comes out. I've got, you guys now, or Plano now sells these boxes individually. And I've got another box that's got the hooks I'm going to use for wherever I'm going. So these go in storage. I don't have to take them out, and the new ones go in. And these things are just, I mean, look at them. They got a lid on top of it. Nothing's going to fall out. They're a box in and of their own. And I do that all the way through. I'll customize my terminal tackle to what area of the country or where I'm going fishing. It's just so fast and so efficient.
Yeah. The beauty of them is they fit the 3,500, the 3,600, and the 3,700 boxes. And like you say, so like for me, I built one just for tungsten weights, and I carry a lot of volume. I've got a Z21, I got a lot of space, and I don't want to be without things. So, you're thinking about efficiency, and you got to bring enough that you can fit it in your kayak, or, you're going to go here or there. But I try to have, I carry a lot. I'm really bad about overstuffing my boxes. Like I told you, I had 170 Thunder Crickets in that one jig box. It's just, I don't want to not have enough of anything. So I'm a little bit excessive, but with those little dividers and with each of those little storage boxes, if they got them for, little hooks, big hooks, medium-sized hooks, it's perfect for their terminal box. Is arguably the most innovative box that I've seen in storage boxes ever.
Yeah, and the crap doesn't fall out. It doesn't go from spot to spot. It's so nice.
And it don't rust.
No.
Ever. I mean, all of them, even those little boxes are restrictor molded all the way through them. So that's a big deal. I've heard about rust inhibitors and things in the past, and I've never seen it work. I mean, this truly absolutely works. So for the saltwater guys, they got to really love them.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Gene, I got a question for you. How long ago did you launch your channel, and how did you come up with the name Flukemaster?
Goodness. My channel was launched in 2008, I believe. YouTube was about a year and a half, 2 years old. I started it, and the reason I started the channel is that back around there and then all of the TV shows, because that's all there was TV shows, they had all stopped teaching people how to fish and started just, hey, watch me fish and buy my products, and they forgot to teach. And I was just like, man, and I was at that point in time where I wanted to find my place in the industry, and I was like, I know how to teach. Now I just got to learn how to teach fishing and learn how to film and stuff like that. And so I started it, and Flukemaster came from that period of time because of all the forums. The social media at that period of time was mainly forums. Facebook wasn't around or anything else. Yeah. And so my screen name was Flukemaster, and I tried hard to get away from it after my channel started to get popular, and I couldn't. I had already established Flukemaster as my name online, so it became my brand name. And it actually took me about 4 years to separate Flukemaster from Gene Jensen. So, and I had to try to get to people to stop calling me Flukemaster and understand that I'm Gene Jensen with Flukemaster, the brand. And it's been a fun little journey, but yeah, that was the reason. It just stuck, and I couldn't get rid of it.
It's one of those names, Kevin. I don't know if you agree, but you almost want to say Flukemaster. I mean, just to have a little fun. Hey, if somebody wanted to start a YouTube channel now, what are your recommendations?
I always tell people to start. Stop talking about it. Stop wasting time. Stop saying, I'm going to grab your cell phone, your iPhone, and start filming your fishing life or whatever else you love. And make sure you love it. Don't do it for the money. I still don't do it for the money. They pay my wife to let me do this, and I do it for free, you know? And so that's the way I feel. I love to teach people how to fish. I love to see, or I love to read the stories of dads fishing with kids. And it's just, there's a whole gamut of different people that love to share their stories with me. And I love it. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Hey, we really appreciate you coming on to College of Bass tonight. If anybody wants to check it out, YouTube, Flukemaster. How many videos have you got posted so far?
Ooh, somewhere around 750.
There's a lot of good ones. You
Wow.
definitely want to go to Gene's channel and check it out. He's got them on just about every technique, and he's no nonsense. So that's what I like about it.
Yep.
No, appreciate it, Gene.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. Hey, again, Kevin, if anybody wants to order boxes tonight, Dad's boxes are available for free shipping on the Plato site right now through Friday. So which is pretty cool. Hey, we had a question come in from Brosdahl, Brian Brosdahl with the College of Ice. And he had a question from last week. He was tuned in and he wanted to ask you, he said, are you ever fishing smallmouth with Marabou or hair jigs, which are real popular in a lot of parts of the country, but I just wanted to throw that one out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So they kind of came back in vogue the last few years. There's a section up there in Minnesota and kind of Green Bay where guys were using the real light jigs up there at Sturgeon Bay and that, and they're just deadly. I mean, they imitate a leech to them and they just can't handle it. So I started fishing as a teenager using Marabou hair jigs. For smallmouth up here, because we just didn't have all those other things. And this was before they had tube baits even. So, and I've used them deer hair jigs and Marabou both. And I like Marabou. I still do. I've got a lot of them. There's a time and place. They're a great cold water bait for sure. It's a good early season bait. It's a good late fall bait, but those real light, I call them almost trout weight type Marabou jigs. They're just amazingly effective. You can throw them on real light line. And if you get that in front of a smallmouth, especially sight fishing, cruising, like that, they're not going to pass it up. They just, it's like candy to them.
Every time I think of Marabou, I think of Virgil Ward. I don't know why.
Yep.
It's kind of fun. Hey, let's move back into spinnerbaits because we've got a lot to talk about here. And one of the questions I wanted to really dig deep with you is how do you pick the specific spinnerbait for the situation? I mean, you've got a lot of characteristics of the bait. You've got the blades, you've got the skirt, you've got the head size and all that. So take us through, how do you go through your decision process to pick the bait for specific situations? Well,
I'm going to look at the water clarity, the depth, the type of cover that I have, obviously a little bit with the time of the year and the temperature and things like that. But really what I'm trying to do is look at what I've got in front of me that I'm trying to fish, how deep it is, how thick the cover is. And I'm trying to pick a depth, and a blade combination and head combination that'll allow that spinnerbait to run at the depth and speed that I want to for those conditions. So if I'm trying to slow roll a spinnerbait on a 7-foot grass line, I want to pick a weight and blade combination that's going to be efficient for the grass and for that exact zone. So in that, in that case, it's probably going to be a 1/2 ounce double willow combination, maybe with a little bit smaller blades on it, just to allow it to stay down to get to that 7-foot zone and still have a little bit of speed still. If I'm burning a spinnerbait in clear water, I want to use a compact frame that has extra weight to it, small willow blades, and really be able to burn it. So it's all about water displacement and the blade types themselves. That's what a spinnerbait runs on, is those blades, and the blades provide flash, vibration, and most importantly, the displacement or lift. They control the speed of the bait. So the blades that you choose along with that head weight is going to give you the depth and speed for that particular situation. And that's what I'm trying to master is like cover that particular zone.
So I'm hearing you think blades, the blade combination, the blade choices are your number one thing, going into the decision process.
Yep, no doubt. It's you got to pick the right blade combination for the conditions. Willow blades, for instance, they give off lots of flash. They displace less water. They move quicker through there. So they're better for clearer situations. You can move them quicker. Fish don't get as good a look at them. You don't need as much vibration in that situation, where the exact opposite is a Colorado blade. They push the most water, the most displacement, the most vibration. They're really good for cold water and for muddy water. When you're trying to, use the blades and that sonic image that it gives off in the water they push to help them find the bait. So, and then a combination of the two is very good in between, in stained water or, for deeper situations. Again, Colorado blades really slow a bait down. Willow blades allow it to go faster. So I'm going to pick a combination of blades and head weight that gives me the depth and speed that I want that spinnerbait to run.
Okay. And talk a little bit about the combinations. I mean, do you typically fish willow or a willow Colorado or a single Colorado? What is your preferred?
Most of the time when I'm fishing a spinnerbait, I'm really fishing it at two main speeds. I fish one pretty fast, or I fish it pretty slow. And when I say pretty slow, I'm typically slow rolling it around some type of cover. And it just is a powerful bait to trigger a fish if it stays in the strike zone for a long time. So I'm going to choose a combination of those blades for that depth. So in the clearest water and for those fast presentations, that double willow combination is really my go-to. Strike King makes a real narrow willow blade called a razor blade. And we put those on our deep water spinnerbaits like the Bottom Dweller, and we put them on the spinnerbaits like our Burner for high speed retrieves, because they still give a lot of flash, but they don't displace much water. So you can reel them a lot faster, or they allow the same weight bait to run deeper. So those are what I use in that situation. The exact opposite is that Colorado blade spinnerbait, where you got double Colorados. They push tons of water, give off lots of vibration. I'm going to throw those in muddy water, around shallow cover and things like that. So great summertime, dirty water, river spinnerbait, things like that. In the spring, when the lakes are high and the bushes are in the water and it gets muddy and things after all these rains and stuff, it's the same thing. Cold water, you want a slower presentation. That's where the vibration and that extra water displacement comes in. And then in between that, it's all about depth. So if you want to get a spinnerbait deep, say 20 feet, you got to use enough weight to overcome the lift that those blades have. So I'm going to use a combination of both. And then cover is part of it too. Grass is one of those things that willow blades fish through the grass. They slither through the grass a lot better than a Colorado blade does. So I typically use at least a rear willow blade on my spinnerbaits when I'm fishing grass. And one thing that I can do if I need to adjust the bait to run a little deeper or a little shallower is just change the rear blade out. So if I've got a number 4.5 willow blade on my spinnerbait and I want it to run a little bit deeper, I can go down to a 4. And I'll just take the swivel and the blade off of another one and put it on there. Or if I want to upsize, if I want to slow it down or make it ride a little higher, I can go to a bigger one, go up to a number 5, for instance. So, that's a real quick trick to change, to customize the spinnerbait right on the fly. And you don't have to carry quite as many. I carry a little 3,500 edge box of just spinnerbait blades already with swivels on them, just for making those quick adjustments on the water.
So when you're picking blades, talk a little bit about the color. John Creek just asked a question. What are your thoughts on colored blades? And you had a colored blade in that photo. But I mean, there's gold, there's silver, there's colored. What is your kind of your thoughts on the different colors and blades?
Well, a big thing for me when I'm looking at spinnerbaits is the water clarity and then the sky conditions. So it's real important in just about every situation for me to make sure that I'm fishing the spinnerbait above the bass's line of sight. I want them looking up at it towards the surface, because the surface is a great way to disguise the overall look of the bait and make it look more natural. So when they look up at it against that silver mirror, when you're burning a spinnerbait in clear water, they're just seeing the flash and they're just seeing that movement of that spinnerbait. So it helps disguise the bait so they don't get too good a look at it. So in clear water, silver blades match that the best, just like Mother Nature, everything in nature acts like a chameleon and blends in with its surroundings. Those shad or little silver minnows that are by the surface, they're designed to look like the surface for a reason. They're translucent and they blend in with that silver mirror, and that helps them hide from predators like bass. So silver blades match the conditions the best in that clear water. So bright conditions, sunny conditions, clear water, I'm going to use silver blades. If the water starts getting stained, I like gold. As long as I've got good light penetration, it's hard to beat a metallic blade. Where painted blades really come in for me is in cloudy conditions or really dirty water. You just don't get a lot of flash in real cloudy conditions off of a metallic blade. And that's where a white blade or a chartreuse blade really silhouettes. It's very visible. And again, when they're looking up at it against that surface, it's not quite the same. I mean, there's nothing in nature that's chartreuse. There's not a thing that swims chartreuse. But basically in low light, bass see in black and white. And you take a black and white photo of a chartreuse spinnerbait, and it's almost like pearl white. And again, if they're looking up at it, the underside or the belly of every fish that swims is white. So it's natural to have those tones, in my spinnerbait. So day in, day out, the colors that I'm going to choose are those, clear, matching the bait fish, these translucent, blue glimmer, green glimmer, green gizzard shad, silver, those natural translucent skirts in clear water. And then as it gets dirty, that's where your brighter colors come in. The chartreuses, the fluorescents and things like that. You can see I got a couple red ones in my box right there. I've got this box packed for red crest, coming up next week. And red is just a really, really good color in Texas anywhere. The bass are just so keyed into those red crayfish that it's just a good color, and it's a bright color. It's a good dirty water color any time of the year. So the biggest thing for sure is the blade combination color. I want to match the forage for sure. And I want it to look natural for the conditions. And in a lot of cases in our natural lakes where you and I live, it's bluegill. So I use a lot of bluegill colors, and clear water is where it really is critical in choosing the right color. And dirty water, you just want to make it as visible as possible.
So are you matching head color and skirt color? And how does your we've had a ton of questions on trailers. Are you using trailers very often? Are you matching? How do you bring the two together?
Yep. So when I don't use a trailer on a spinnerbait for any of my faster retrieves at all. It just changes it really throws the balance off on the spinnerbait. It's hard to make them run true at high speeds, add in plastic or add more bulk to it. Usually in those situations, I'm trying to make the bait less a smaller silhouette. So I'll trim the skirt back. I'll thin the skirt out in clear water, make it the overall profile look smaller. I mean, what bass are seeing is not the blades. They're seeing the skirt and the head and how long it is and how wide it is when it's coming through the water. So if you thin it down, it makes it narrower, more compact, makes it a smaller profile bait fish that you're imitating. So in dirty water, it's the exact opposite. I want to make it bulkier. So if I'm slow rolling a spinnerbait and I'm fishing in stained water, I'm going to add a split tail trailer or a swim bait or a grub, something like that, a curl tail, even a ribbon tail worm. I like to add the extra action of a trailer for slow rolling. It just really helps the fish home in it, gets more action, more visibility to it, and really works. But one thing I always do, and I've seen that come across the screen a bunch, is add a trailer hook. I'm trying to make bass react to this thing. And instead of just casting a spinnerbait out and reeling it in, I'm never fishing it on a straight, steady retrieve. I'm trying to bang it into cover every chance I can get. I want to make that skirt flare, the blades jump, change their rotation. I start and stop it with quick turns of the handle. I twitch the rod tip. I'm trying to always make it look unnatural, make it look erratic, make it move not just in a straight line. And it's no different than a plastic worm. You don't cast a plastic worm out and just reel it back to the boat. You shake it, you jiggle it, you wiggle it, you work it. A jig's the same way. And a spinnerbait or any bait in your tackle box, you should be doing the same thing with. If you're running a crankbait and it's deflecting all around on the bottom is doing that for you. But with a spinnerbait that's going through the water column, you want to make it look like it's an easy meal. So, I'll burn it even in open water. It's right underneath the surface. I'll burn that spinnerbait along 10, 15 feet. Then I'll pop it a couple times with the rod tip or turn the handle real quick and, just start and stop it. Just make that skirt flare, make it break up the speed of that bait. That's what triggers them to fire up and just attack it.
So if you're running say you're fishing target situations where you're casting to a specific target, what are you using for rod choice versus if you're casting open water areas, large flats, stuff like that. Talk to me a little bit about the rod, length, action, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I have my own series of rods from Lew's that we've developed, and we got 23 different models. So I've got a lot of different ones, and they're really geared for those particular things. So if I'm target fishing, you want a shorter rod. I'm going to use a faster reel. I like a 7.5-to-1 reel for throwing a spinnerbait. It brings in 31 inches of line per turn. And I'm going to throw it on a 6'10" medium heavy or a 7-foot medium heavy. That's perfect for those 30 to 50 foot casts. When you got a lot of, say you got flooded bushes or you're trying to throw underneath boat docks and things like that. A short rod,
it's more accurate.
You're to be accurate with
than
a long rod. Now in open water, or you're throwing big spinner baits or ledge fishing or grass, that's exact opposite. You want a big rod. I'm going to throw a 7.4 medium heavy or a 7.6, a big rod that has a lot of backbone to it, that you can move a lot of line with on a hook set, especially smallmouth. They're so fast, you got to be able to catch up to them quick. But you don't want to be handcuffed with a 6'10" or a 7-footer out there in open water with it. So that's why we have, all these different tools in the rod box just for those different situations. But target fishing is spinnerbait 101. And that's where a lot of people throw them around the bank, and having a short rod that doesn't have too long a handle. I'm going to rig it with 20-pound line. I mean, a spinnerbait is a bait that the line size does not affect the action of that bait. So it's a big fish bait. You're fishing around cover.
But it does affect running depth.
Yeah. So if you want to have a spinnerbait go real deep, you can downsize. And I do a little bit, but even when I'm throwing that big 1 3/8 bottom dweller, in deep water, I still am never going to go below 17. With fluorocarbon now, it's real low and stretch. It does sink. It helps give you good contact to the bait. And there's just not a big difference between going from 17 to 14. And I don't want to give up that strength. It's, you hook as a tournament fisherman, if I hook a 7, 8, 9 pounder and he's in a brush pile, I want to get him out. And that's why I'm using big line. A lot of times in shallow cover, I'll use 25. I mean, you can use as big as you want. I don't like to use braid. It just, with no stretch, and it's so sensitive, I tend to, I've jerked the bait away from the fish. I want the fish to get the bait, to eat the bait good. I'm always using that trailer hook because I'm getting a lot of reactionary strikes when I deflect it off cover and things like that. And I'm not going to catch them without that trailer hook on there. But I want that fluorocarbon because it gives me the best of both worlds with the sensitivity, the strength, and depth.
We just had a question. He's having trouble breaking knots. His knots are breaking with fluorocarbon using improved clinch knots. What's the knot that you've been using with fluoro?
Yeah, I think that the simplest, easiest, fastest knot to use is a Palomar knot. It's hard to beat. If you wet that knot when you're tightening it up, it's basically the closest thing you can get to 100%. That you can really tie. You can tie the double Palomar knot with the two lines
with the double twist.
Takes a little bit longer to do it, but I tie a Palomar knot. And again, I'm just very adamant about cinching that down, put it in my mouth, cinch it down, clip that line off. I use Bass Pro's XPS fluorocarbon. It's a really high grade of fluorocarbon. If you're using premium fluorocarbon, you should not be. I mean, I don't ever break at the knot. It just almost never, ever happens for me with the line that I fish with.
I found it. We did a segment called Knot Wars years back on North American Fisherman. We actually tested all the knots.
That show.
Wasn't that cool?
And
we found that the Palomar is actually a knot that if you don't cinch it properly can fail. And it's one of those things that you've obviously tied up to thousands, hundreds of thousands of them. So you've got it down, but that's one of those knots that you've got to cinch down carefully, and you've got to wet it before you do it. But there was a knot that really impressed me called the Fishing Fool knot. That's basically a modified, I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but you go through the hook eye twice, and then you wrap up the shank and cinch it down. And I found that it was easier for me to tie when your hands get super cold and wet in those situations. But those are some great things. Hey, one of the things, there's a difference. There really is a difference between someone that casts a bait out. I don't care if it's a crankbait or a rattle bait, a spinner bait, or whatever. There's a big difference between casting it out and reeling it in, expecting success. So what you mentioned a couple of them, but what are the little things that you're doing differently than everybody else? Why are you catching more fish on average than everybody else? What are you doing differently with a spinner bait?
Well, we talked about changing the speed and making the skirt flare and doing all that, but when you do it is real critical. So, if I'm fishing a spinnerbait and I want to keep it above the bass's line of sight, and I'm on a clear water, lake, and I'm fishing it over a 10-foot weed flat, if I let that spinnerbait get down 3 or 4 feet to the bass's level, they see it too well, and they just know it's not real. So I got to keep it above them. I got to keep it moving fast. There's no cover to run into there. I can't bump it off anything. So what I try to do is make it look like it's injured or fake that there's something there. So if I see a target, say there's a boulder out in the water or a weed clump, right as that spinnerbait is getting up to it, that's when I'm going to, make that speed change, pop that rod a couple of times right over the target. If there's one sitting there, that's all it takes is that little bit of change right there, right when it's right in the zone to make them react to it. So right as you're reeling it by the corner of a dock, make it hit that last post, let it flare for a minute, let those blades flutter, then continue to retrieve. That's what's going to get that fish to trigger. So it's timing, the exact location, and again, just constantly changing speeds. People say that, they talk about it, but so many times I've been fishing over the years when we used to have co-anglers in the boat. I'll watch the guy, back there, and they're just casting it out and winding it in, or they're casting it close to targets, but afraid that they're going to get hung up. So they, run it right down beside the dock, but never hit the piling on the dock, run it along the log, but don't bump the blades against the log itself. If I'm fishing a laydown, I want my spinnerbait to bounce, to bump that log as much as possible. And if I've got a really high percentage target, like a good laydown log, I'll throw it 10 times. The first tournament that I ever
really, wow.
The first tournament I ever won was at Lake Lanier. It was a December tournament, Bassmaster tournament way back in the day. It was a BP Top 100. And I was fishing a spinnerbait, slow rolling it on, big rock banks and laydowns on the Chattahoochee River on the way upper end. And most of the big fish that I caught that week, I caught quite a handful that were over 5 pounds, which were big ones for that lake at the time. I never got one of them to bite without making less than 6 casts to the same target. And most of them, it was 10 consecutive casts to the same laydown, and boom, you'd catch a 5-pounder, you'd catch a 6-pounder. Or 7-pounder, whatever it was. They never would bite it on the first cast. I mean, you just had to keep it going through there. And finally you hit the limbs just right, and I'd bounce it and flare it every time I hit a limb or bump it along that log. And then bam, 6 casts, 7 casts, 8 casts, you'd get them to bite. And that's just something that stuck with me. And I saw that on a Jimmy Houston television show years ago. And he was actually in that tournament. And I told him that story afterwards. I said, "You're the one that taught me how to be that repetitive with a spinnerbait." He's one of the greatest spinnerbait fishermen ever. So
that's amazing.
A lot of confidence in. So you got to be persistent.
Hey, we're running out of time already. I mean, I'm sitting here going, I had 100 more questions I want to ask, but I want to move into some viewer questions real quick before we do it. We got one from Jake Bell. The Red Crest is coming up. You guys are going to be dealing with some nasty conditions, and so he had a question. Do you think the Red Crest Championship, you'll be fishing shallow or offshore? Or kind of take us through a little bit what your strategy is based on what you know right now.
Well, so the lake has got a lot of offshore structure. It's a shallower lake. Most of it is 30 feet and less. So it has a ton of water in that 10 to 20 foot zone that fits this time of year. It's basically winter conditions down there. The bass are pre-spawn. They want to move up, but with these conditions, a lot of them are going to be staged.
They want to move out.
Yeah. So the Lake Master mapping of it is really good. And I looked at a lot of different areas when I was down there pre-fishing. I went down there in early January before it was off limits. And I looked at a lot of that. I graphed a lot of it with side imaging and looked at a lot of neat stuff, saw a lot of fish. There are hybrids in here, and there's a lot of white bass. So you can kind of tell, though, when you see those big groups on some of that deeper structure that they're probably not largemouth. What I was looking for is those groups where you'd see 4 or 5. And so I've definitely got some of that stuff to look at, but you just never know. I mean, you got to play the conditions, but it's setting up to be more of a structure oriented tournament just because those deeper fish are a lot less affected.
Yeah.
These fronts. I mean, all this snow that they've just got, it's all going to be running into those creeks, and it's going to be running in at 33 and 34 degrees. And they've never seen temperatures that low down there. So this is, more than once in 100-year event down there. It's nothing in recorded history. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Hey, Defoe mentioned last week that he was a big fan of the FG nut. I know you have as well. So Kevin just wanted to let everybody know that Ott's YouTube channel has a great video for tying the FG knot. So if you want to learn how to tie it, I'd head over there right away. Hey, here's a question from Bill Tharp that was really interesting to me. I don't know how often you use braid and use leader material on there, but if you are, what's your leader length when you're using spinning rods versus bait casters?
So I use a ton of braid on spinning equipment with a fluorocarbon leader, and I'm a fanatic about fluorocarbon and that these fish can't see it. Growing up here in Michigan, fishing Lake Michigan, where I can see the bottom in 30 foot, their fish are line shy. And I've seen that not only do they see braid, but I think they can feel braid in the water. So I use a pretty long leader. It's going to be 30 foot or so on my spinning rods.
Really?
I do tie it absolutely 1000% every time with an FG knot. That is a knot that if you're going to use braid to fluoro, it takes a little more time, but it is exceptionally the best knot out there.
Now, you're not running into problems with the knot in the spool?
No, I don't. Not with that FG knot. I've learned to tie it with a few less loops. It takes practice, just like anything else, to get it very precise. You got to keep all your leads tight through that process. And if you tie a nice tight one and trim it right off, I can fish with one all day. And, if you're fishing around a lot of zebra mussels and stuff like that, if you start with a 30-foot leader, you're going to end up, with 20 feet at the end of the day because of, breaking it off in the rocks and things like that. So it does save time during a competition day, but it makes a difference in the bites that you get. I still, for, swim baits and things like that, I love straight fluoro the best, but I just don't like the twist. The beauty of the braid is you get no twist. You can cast farther. You get that great sensitivity, helps with your hook sets. More and more, most pros are using straight braid with a fluorocarbon leader on their spinning equipment. And then on bait casters, for frogs and things like that, we're using straight bait for flipping, punching. One thing that I do like to use on a bait caster with a short leader is topwater. Like if you're throwing a walking bait, like a sexy dog, a straight king sexy dog, they want to tangle if you use straight braid. It's so limp.
It's so limp and soft, yeah.
Yep. So I'll use a short, just a 24-inch heavy mono leader on it. The mono's pretty buoyant. It helps keep it up on top. The braid floats. So it just is a game changer for walking stick baits, for instance, or a popper. You got to have.
Poppers will sink with fluoro.
Yeah, you got to have. You can't throw them on fluoro. You cannot throw fluorocarbon on top water at all. That's the one thing that I still use some mono for is top water.
Oh man, I promised we were going to be done by 8 o'clock Central, and we're a minute late. But I have one more question that I wanted to ask you, and that it's actually comes from Mike Milbury. He says, "Do you ever take time in tournament if you stumble across a school of suspended fish? Do you ever target these fish, or do you just keep on going?"
Anytime I stumble onto fish anywhere that I see, whether around my graph or I see fish breaking out in the open, it's worth it. You can definitely, you can definitely get well in a hurry on those type of fish. They also are the ones that are going to move the most. So, I'm really excited, with the advent of this forward facing sonar that we have, Mega 360, I saw it for the first time. We're waiting for our Mega Live. That's when it'll make that a whole new world. We see it's changing the way people are already fishing, and it's going to open that world up to suspended fish. I think a few years ago when the Alabama rig came out with it, opened a lot of people's eyes because that's such an efficient rig for deep water areas and suspended fish. Well, live sonar tells the whole story, so that's coming.
I've been fishing, the Garmin Live Scope. It's been a blast. Hey, next week you're going to be at Red Crest next week. We're going to be doing the show live from Red Crest, and we'll have Jordan Lee on board. So I'm really looking forward to having that next week. We do need to pick the prize pack winner for tonight. And I'd like to thank everybody that's been part of the show and participate. We've had a zillion questions, and just the comments have been phenomenal. Thank you. We're going to pull a number of questions for next week from the ones that we just couldn't get to tonight. But we do have a winner tonight for the Plano prize pack, including this Yeti mug. So congratulations to Heather Leanne Eddington. I hope I pronounced that right, for taking home the prize pack. And Kevin, good luck next week, and we'll be looking forward to having you. Do you got anything you want to say in closing before we head back into the cold?
No, well, hey, I appreciate everybody's input. I enjoy doing this. I'm watching those questions across there. I wish we could get to more of them. One of the things we really need to think about doing is one of these shows is nothing but a question and answer show, because one topic just leads to the next, and I could go for hours, but unfortunately, we just got a limited bit of time. So we appreciate everybody's support, and I look forward to next week, man. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun event at Red Crest, and I look forward to having Jordan Lee on.
Awesome. Travel safe. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week from Red Crest.
Thanks for watching The College of Bass. Join us for an all-new episode every Wednesday night.